We've got two of the preeminent minds in intelligence and national security with us today, and we're going to hear from them what their thoughts are on some very significant issues that are taking place in the world, not the least of which is what's going on in Washington. We all know that the White House is the capital of the world, but Congress is the crossroads of the world. And anything that takes place in your space, in the national security space, has to go through there. So first, we're going to hear from the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Mike Rogers, and then we're going to hear from his partner, vice chairman, the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, Dutch Ruppersberger, and then we're going to take some questions, and I will be the moderator for that, and I ask for your patience. Chairman Rogers.
Thank you very much, JJ, and I do appreciate your work in a radio venue. Being able to flesh out those stories in the way you do, I think, is pretty fantastic. If you haven't had a chance to hear them, I suggest you look them up. I just wanted to take a minute. We had longer remarks prepared, and we decided we weren't going to do that. We'd rather get to questions. But I do want to say this on the oversight piece and the accountability piece. And for those of you who are in the space professionally, thank you very much for what you do for your country. Yesterday really brought it home to me how important oversight was in the processes of it that we could spend an hour talking about. But just from the general notion that we have a civilian, publicly elected body with all the classification that is responsible for all of the oversight, policy development, and budgeting for the 16 intelligence agencies. It sounds like a lot. And if you throw the word Congress in there, that's enough to scare the bejesus out of anyone, right? Yesterday we met, Dutch and I met with about 100 parliamentarians all across Europe to come here really fairly aggressively about how bad our U.S. intelligence services are. And why are we doing what we were doing, and isn't that a terrible day for America? And one thing struck me in the course of that dialogue is that Dutch and I have a very good idea of what all 16 of those agencies are doing. They had very little understanding of what their own intelligence agencies are doing, not even close. And that oversight, yes, as Keith Alexander used to describe it as the wire brush treatment with Congress, is a very important part of allowing the credibility of our intelligence services to do what they do, because it has that stamp of approval, if you will, on behalf of the American people by its elected representatives who serve in Congress. And again, I could go in for an hour about all the processes that we've done, and when Dutch and I got to the committee, we decided this is so important, national security is so important, the world's falling apart right in front of us, that we better do this in not just a bipartisan way, but a nonpartisan way, if we can do it. And we decided we were going to do that, and we did it. We reformed the way the committee operates. We believe that it is a functioning oversight body that actually provides a service to the intelligence community and to the American people. Doesn't mean we always agree. Doesn't mean that we don't disagree with the intelligence community sometimes, and we advocate and push and legislate for changes in that particular community. But at the end of the day, when they're doing really hard work around the world, in that space that's really hard to operate in, and somebody bumps into somebody, we can honestly and in good conscience come to the American people and say, yep, that may not have been great, but we knew about it, we were overseeing it, we budgeted, and we approved of it. And I think in the last few years, as you can see all the things that we may have bumped into along the way in that very difficult space of intelligence, I think you'd find that Dutch and I, in almost 100% agreement, stood behind our decisions and the intelligence community decisions as they went out and did their work. And so, again, yesterday just brought it home to me completely. They'll go back and have all the politics surrounding of what the NSA did or what the contractor that stole American secrets and ran to Russia did to them or for them or with them.
You're talking about Snowden.
Oh, yeah. I refuse to say his name. But I will tell you that at the end of the day, when we look back and we walked out of that meeting, we thought, what a great system we had. It's not perfect, but what a great system, because we now, as members of Congress, can advocate for the good things we do and we have the leverage and ability to change the things we disagree with in the intelligence community. I think this is the right way to do it. I think those changes that we have made together, and we have been partners in this process, I think have been an important step for providing some cover for, again, you all doing the great work that you do across, really across the globe and here in the United States. So for that, I want to say thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Dutch, and then we can go into some questions.
Thank you, Mike. First thing I do want to say that Mike, as chairman, has done a tremendous job. Mike and I, in the beginning, we were both on the Intelligence Committee, but when we both came to leadership, we were very concerned about our past history on our Intelligence Committee. We couldn't get budgets passed. You had a lot of partisan politics, and we weren't doing our job to oversee the 16 committees that we oversee. And it was about oversight. And we decided that we were going to work together and also get our staffs to work together, because our staffs do a lot in working with all the committees that we deal with. Now, as far as what our challenges are and as far as oversight generally, oversight is important, and we do a lot of our oversight because we also do all of the intelligence committees or agencies' budgets. And we have hearings, we come in, we talk, and what Mike and I also have tried to do, in the past it seemed that Congress was always trying to knock somebody down. You're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong. And what our philosophy is, we're going to build you up. We're going to hold you accountable, but we're going to build you up so you can do the job. And believe me, we have so many issues that are out there right now. Whether it's the terrorism issue, the ISIS issue, whether it's cyber security, which is very dangerous. People say to me, and Mike and I are the Gang of 8, what keeps you up at night? And I'll say 3 things: spicy Mexican food, weapons of mass destruction, and cyber attacks. And we are losing, just in this country, mostly China, and I'll say it's China, but other countries too. We're losing billions of dollars, of American dollars, because the cyber attacks that most of all of our companies, even fertilizer companies, because China has fertilizer companies. So we have a lot to do as far as our priorities. Another issue that not a lot of people don't talk about anymore, but it's so important to us as a country, is space and our space programs and what we do in that regard. So now, one question, and I'll stop because I think it's important that we answer the questions. But the issue of oversight and what we do, I think the 9/11 Commission talked about maybe having another group together, another committee. I don't think Mike and I see that as the way to go, because it's just it creates another level of getting to the bottom line as quickly as you can. I think the important thing that we need to do is, when you're dealing with, say, as an example, you're dealing with issues involving terrorism, it's important, I think, that the leadership of the Armed Services Committee, of the Foreign Affairs Committee, of the Homeland Security Committee, and the Intelligence Committee come together, and we talk about the issues to make sure we're not missing anything. And by the way, we do that now. We go into a SCIF, but we might want to formalize that a little bit more. But I'm not in favor of creating a whole, if Congress people are running around they're running around trying to go to committee hearings, and a lot of them have so much to do they don't do a lot. So it's important that we, I think, create that system that is necessary for us to do the oversight that is necessary. Let's get to the questions.
Yeah. Well, and then just one comment on that committee they're trying to create. Part of the problem is people believe that if I don't see the oversight on the front page of the newspaper, no offense to my media friends,
none taken.
That's not oversight, that there isn't any oversight happening. And that's where I think we take exception to that. We take just give you 2 interesting numbers. Last year, 130 specific meetings to the National Security Agency, either staff, members, or hearings related to the proper and consistent oversight. This year, we've done 100. Right now, hopefully you don't see any of those, and you haven't seen any of those. That's the way the committee's designed to do it. We have to be able to protect the classification of those programs. It doesn't mean that there isn't oversight, and it doesn't mean we haven't made changes. We've suggested changes, made changes, demanded changes. We affect it through their budgets, through some policy decisions we make on the committee. And I think it's very, very important to understand that just because you don't read it on the front page doesn't mean there isn't good oversight happening.
I know I asked for questions, but I did want to say after Snowden...
We'll do this all day, by the way, JJ. Don't let us get away with it.
I'm fine with it.
About lack of oversight. We have a tremendous amount of oversight with the NSA. We go to the NSA. We do the same with CIA and these other agencies. And there was oversight. And the good news is that Chairman Feinstein from the Senate Intelligence Committee and Saxby Chambliss and Mike and I, we are very close. We work together. We've gone to Afghanistan together. But we came together and said, all of this national media virus that is out there, I mean, it's ridiculous because it's not true. Now, the perception was there. And Mike and I realized that you have to deal with perception. So we changed the major law on bulk collection. We took all the bulk collection away from the government, and it's now a different process. So you have to adjust, and especially for the American people, because they are worried about privacy, as they should be, and we have to make sure that all of our laws balance out the privacy versus what we need to do in intelligence. Questions?
So, questions. I have two favorite duos. One are Mr. and Mrs. J.J. Green Sr., who've been married for 57 years, and this is the other duo. Seems like they've been married for a long time.
We feel like we've been married.
Get divorced. He's retiring from Congress.
The real point here is, the reason why I like this duo so much is because they actually get their work done. They're from different political parties, but they actually work together. And what they're saying here is not something they're just saying. As a national security correspondent at WTOP for the last 10 years, I've had the opportunity to observe them for a good part of that time and watch them work together. So in view of what I've watched and learned, I've got some questions for you. A couple of them are written down here on these note cards, but a couple coming from here, just based on the time and space that I've had to observe you and your work. I know that you know significantly more about what's going on internationally than you often discuss, and I know you can't for obvious reasons. But there's a pressing question this morning in my mind. We know that the world is spinning faster and faster and faster. Responding to all those threats is getting more and more difficult every day. And now a new threat, I understand, in the Middle East has emerged. And it's kind of hard to get people to talk about that, at least within the last day or so. What can you tell us about this new threat that's emerging from the Middle East?
It's old with a new twist. Let me put it that way. So we knew that, I think this is what you're talking about, that Al-Qaeda had forward deployed a group of Al-Qaeda individuals, associated individuals, whose sole purpose is to put together an operation. Excuse me, I'm not trying to be cute here. I just look really bad in those orange jumpsuits with the numbers on the back. So I'm trying to make sure I get this part right.
Understood.
Makes me look very boxy. It's really very unflattering.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. So this particular group, and we take it as a very serious threat stream. One that we're concerned about, and sometimes it gets lost on the public discussion based on the threat of ISIL, because that is a threat. I think the other threat is probably more immediate, and what concerns us most about it is the working that we see with AQAP, other Al-Qaeda affiliates, to put together an operation that's successful, mainly targeted at aviation targets. I think all of that has been public. But it's serious, and it's rising up. And it's interesting that where you see these operatives isn't necessarily where you might see them before. So you might see some in Iraq and Syria and Northern Africa putting this plan together in conjunction with another affiliate. That's a new twist of the way we see it. And so you have this immediate threat that we continue to push back on, this Al-Qaeda threat, and encourage our intelligence services to do what they can, in addition to what is a growing national security threat, which is ISIL, and their ability to get people back into the United States.
So with this new threat, what do you see as their goal? Or is there a one specific goal, or is it a bunch of them?
Well, the best defense against terrorism is intelligence. And we need to get as much intelligence as we can. Now, we have unique resources that no other country has. But we also need intelligence from the ground, too. And so that we know who we're going at, where they are, how we're going to deal with them. We, as far as ISIS is concerned, we knew they were there for years. But remember, in Syria, which is the most dangerous place in the world, you had Assad, you had chemical weapons issue. Then you had the moderate group, but they all of a sudden got reinforcements. Unfortunately, the reinforcements were al-Qaeda and ISIS. And then you had that problem that everyone was focusing on Assad, but then you had some problems with al-Qaeda and the moderates that we were standing behind. And what happened, ISIS, as we know, was so severe, al-Qaeda kind of kicked them out. And ISIS is very strong. They have probably close to $1 billion. They were, most of who they were, and their great militarily was the old Saddam Hussein military that was fighting Iran. And remember, when we came into to Iraq, one of the worst things that we did was get rid of their military. And this military was the military that at that point al-Qaeda hired, and there was close to over 100,000 of them, and that was the insurgency. And now, we resolved that, and we were able to get out of Iraq. And by the way, the reason we came out of Iraq, because Maliki wanted us out, number one, and number two is that they wouldn't give us an immunity agreement to protect our soldiers, and we're not going to put our soldiers at risk there. So then we have this issue with ISIS, and they had momentum, and they're smart and they're good, and the Sunni population in Iraq were not fighting with them, but they were allowing it to happen because of Maliki. Well, now hopefully we'll be able to turn that around. But getting back to the whole intel generally, we have to show to the world that we're strong. We're not going to take it, but we're going to protect our homeland. It's rare that our country, 60% of our country wants us to take on ISIS. So now our strategy is a coalition. We have to get the Arab countries involved and let the Arab countries start putting the boots on the ground. Our country, our citizens don't want us to have another 2 or 3 years in Iraq or Afghanistan. But we have to do what we have to do to coalesce our governments and to make sure we do what we need to do.
Both of you voted yes for the authorization for the money and permission and everything that the president and the administration asked for to train and vet the Syrian opposition. But it's pretty clear it's going to take more than just the authorization and the money to do this. It's going to take, in some people's minds, a Herculean effort to train up this force and get it on the ground and get it operational and get it actually in a place where it can make a difference against ISIL and against all of the things that they're fighting against in Syria, Assad aside. But when you look at this situation and you kind of slice this up into something that's been going on for a couple of years, you're talking about 5,000 perhaps fighters maybe trained up within a year or so, or something on that order.
About right.
Is it enough? Is it soon enough? Can it happen soon enough? And what needs to happen in order to make it effective?
I'm going to look at it several ways. So Dutch and I are at a little disadvantage because we have watched the vetting process develop over a year and a half, probably. And how you would vet those individuals, how you would get them to a training camp, the logistics that would be involved in all of that. And it's complicated, and this is not easy. This is not an easy solution. If I believed that this was the only part of this plan, I wouldn't have supported it either. It won't work in and of itself. But we do have to have, I argue, individuals that are trained to our standards, under the law of war, that have the interest and capability. And again, you don't have to, you just have to be a little better than the enemy in these cases. And if we can give them those skills and they have that intention and will take some direction from the coalition, which is incredibly important, and the United States, we think that you can probably have the first individuals back into Syria within 4 to 5 months. Now, that's not 5,000, but it can be a unit that's cohesive, has good command and control, has the ability to move on intelligence-selected targets, can take a little direction. But that will also take, by the way, and this whole boots-on-the-ground thing makes me nervous. If that unit will be effective, you will have to have U.S. personnel with special capabilities downrange. And so this debate, and that doesn't mean the 101st Airborne Division, but it certainly means, for I think many people in this room understand that, you have to have the ability to move intelligence collectors downrange with these units, as well as people can help them with command and control, logistics, development, and other sustainment issues. And so if we don't have that as a part of it, I'll guarantee you it won't work. And second part of that is that there has to be other kinetic action happening in Syria that shouldn't wait 4 months. It shouldn't wait 2 months. It shouldn't wait next week, candidly. Because if we don't finally send the message to ISIL and the thousands and thousands of people who are sitting in Canada and the United States and Great Britain and Germany today who are thinking, boy, this looks good to me. They're winning. I believe in the caliphate. Maybe that's where I need to be, which is why they have 15,000 of those people already there. If you think of that number, it's astonishing. 15,000. That you have to cut that pipeline off. In order to do that, you have to show that they're not winning, they're not 10 feet tall, they're just a bunch of criminal thugs who slit people's throats, rape women, and I mean, they're the most brutal things that you can think that walk the face of the earth, and we need to treat them that way. So I do believe it can work. It's not going to be perfect. This whole notion we should also stop saying moderate rebels. I'm not, when you look at the folks that are fighting there, we'll prefer anyone that doesn't just hate us outright when they wake up in the morning. I'll take that. That would be a good day for us. And there are individuals there, and this is important too, that I think gets lost in the debate. They're fighting ISIL today. They're taking casualties fighting ISIL elements today. They're taking casualties fighting al-Nusra Front today. They're taking casualties fighting Bashar al-Assad. The same people. They're feeling a bit overwhelmed, and sometimes a friend can be very helpful in those particular circumstances. And here's the other part of this that I thought was so critically important to get at least me to yes and others to yes. The Saudi Arabian government is publicly acknowledging they're going to be in part of this fight. That is huge. Again, we've had strong relationships with the Saudis for a very long time. A public acknowledgement, I think you're going to see some other of these partners step up very soon, also very engaged and publicly acknowledging it. If we want to defeat them, that's the path to me to do it. Had we not voted on that and not voted yes, I guarantee you we would have lost all of that because they're already a little gun shy. So I think if you take those elements, this is not a great plan. It's probably not the plan I would have put forward, but given the circumstances that we're in, I thought this was an important step to get to defeating and dismantling it.
Military is not the only way. It's a component of what we have to do. If you look at Iraq, we were in there militarily, we left, and we didn't get the hearts and minds of the people. And what Mike is saying about the Sunni, especially Saudi Arabia, who will bring the rest of the countries in, that's what has to happen. We're working right now with Sunni tribes, and when the Sunnis say enough is enough, this is ridiculous what ISIS is doing, that's going to make a big difference. The other thing that concerns me, we do all this intelligence, we have our military to protect American lives and our homeland. I think Mike and I are really concerned about we have Americans now who have passports that are going to Syria to get radical, and they're becoming radicalized. We had a situation where an individual went to Syria, was trained as a suicide bomber, came home to see his parents, went back and blew himself up and killed other people. Now, that could have happened. He could have done something in the United States. And our concern is not only ISIS, but there are other groups out there, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. There's a lot of people out there that are planning and plotting to attack us because we're the ultimate goal right now. We have expert bomb makers who are putting plastic bombs in laptops and trying to get them through airplanes and that type of thing. So we have to keep our eye on the ball, not just ISA. That's getting a lot of the national media, and they're very serious, and we've got a plan. You know what I love, too? If you want to be the leader of the world and coordinator, you've got to show you strong leadership. And when the vice president said, we're going to follow you to the gates of hell, that turned around a lot of momentum. I think it made the American people feel better, and I think that our allies felt good. Americans standing here, and they're going to be behind us, and they're going to give the resources we need to do the job.
And it's our job to make sure they don't make a wrong turn on that way.
So the best way to demonstrate exceptionalism is to demonstrate it instead of talking about it. So Thank you for bearing with me on my selfish questions, and I appreciate the prerogative to do that. But now to your questions, which are the most important. First, you mentioned it a minute ago, boots on the ground. If we want to avoid resuming a ground combat role in Iraq, don't we and others have to retrain and re-equip Iraqi armed forces?
Yeah, you know, this is also the one that that sends me into orbit, that it was a leadership problem in the Iraq military. So you had a political problem that was disintegrating. Malik was clearly deciding to go and put his emphasis on his Shiite friends. And when he did that, he corrupted the leadership channels in all of these military units. And so think of this, before this was happening, when ISIL was on the move and coming across the berm, rather than issuing orders through from the civilian government to the military chain of command, which is the way we would do it here, he decided to pull all of his senior leadership away from those units while they're under siege back to Baghdad to have a discussion about the way forward. Right? You take your leadership away from those units at the point where you're getting into contact, and there's some uncertainty about who my friends are or not, if it's my government or is it someone else's government, it's going to collapse, which is why I think you see the administration putting so much effort about, hey, we've got to get this government piece fixed, right? That's correct. But we can chew and walk and chew gum at the same time. I can't even say it, so apparently we can't do it.
And you know,
let me just one other piece of this.
Chew gum.
That's what it was. So thanks. That's why Dutch and I are here together. We'll be here all week, by the way. Try the lamb chops. You're going to love them. On the Peshmerga, you know, so everybody said, oh my gosh, the Peshmerga, who we were counting on, melted away. Yeah, the Kurdish fighters in the north melted away. Well, the problem is they were running out of ammunition. They were outgunned. I mean, these are military units that were in strategic retreat. They weren't in free fall. They were saying, if we're going to protect these soldiers, we got to move back and rearm. And so when you look at these problems, it frustrates me a little bit that we spent all this money and they just melted away. That is a very simple, high-level argument about what the problem isn't. And so I do believe that we can re-engage some of these units. It's all about leadership. When the United States military is standing next to your side, it is amazing how much courage, conviction, and effectiveness you get out of those units. And we've seen it time and time and time again. And so we have to re-engage that. You can't just walk away from these units. They're going to need a little help and nurturing along the way. So I do think that's a component we can fix. We have to fix the leadership portion of it. The officers and their senior NCO corps is not much to speak of, but their officers need to be at the fight constantly and showing leadership. That piece goes away, we'll never get it back. Who can put that back? Nobody can do that like the United States military. And so I do think that equation can get back. You saw what happened to the Peshmerga once they were armed, and we freshened them up a little bit. U.S. boots were standing behind them. They immediately re-engaged in the fight and have been doing very, very well. So that piece can come back. We shouldn't just, again, I'm not a believer in telling the enemy what you won't do. I mean, can you imagine FDR naming the 5 things that we wouldn't do to beat the Japanese? Right? It's just not a good plan. And so I argue we ought to stop doing that now as well. We ought to stop saying what we won't do. If we believe this is a threat to the United States, we ought to say what we will do, which is dismantle them and beat them completely. And I don't think anyone's calling for big military maneuver units. I'm certainly not. I think there's a way forward on the training piece and the troops on the ground issue in Iraq and Syria. And this coalition, I think we're in a good position if we don't lose our nerve moving forward here to actually have an impact, lasting impact this time.
So, you know, part of the reason why you're dealing with what you're dealing with is because there's so many voices out there. At least I hear from both sides, you know, and talking to the administration and talking to the other side as well. There are those that say you should do this and those that say you should do that. But at the end of the day, it's your job in Congress, your oversight function, that guides most of what the government does in all of these situations, especially these situations like this, the hotspots, et cetera, because there is a need for the Congress and the American people to be involved in all of this. Do you get the sense that there is enough oversight or not enough oversight?
On our committee, yes. I mean, we hold committees accountable, but we try to build up our agencies. We sit there, we talk to them. What are your priorities? What do we need to do? And unfortunately, because of sequestration, which really hurts, makes us weaker as a country, you don't cut everything across the board. So that's causing us a problem, especially in intelligence and national security. But yeah, the oversight, and now unfortunately, it depends on the committee and the relationships of the leadership too. It starts with the leadership. I mean, Mike and I made a decision to work together, and I think if you look at the record, we're passing budgets and we're doing those type of things right now. Let me get back to the other issue that you talked about as far as what we need to do as far as to win the war. One of the things we can't do, and Mike said it, we can't tell our enemies when we're going to come and attack them or what we're going to do. We can't respond to national media because that's what the people are hearing. We have to do the right thing and make sure that when we are going to focus and take somebody out and bring them to justice, we do it our way and we do it based on solid intelligence. And that's where our strategies are right now.
So time is slipping away. We have about 5 minutes left, and I have 48 questions in my hand. So I'm assuming that as we go through this, I'll shut up in a second. If we don't get to some of these, perhaps you guys can respond to some of these.
Yeah, tell Mike to do it in 20 seconds, and I'll do it 30 seconds.
First question. You mentioned the balance between privacy and national security in the intel space. What is the HPSI position about this balance? And you kind of mentioned a little bit of it earlier. And what guidance is provided to the agencies?
We spent a lot of time on this issue. I think we've found the right balance. And there is more protection than I think people realize when it comes to what the NSA is doing. Matter of fact, I think in a lot of cases, if they found out what the intelligence community can't do, people would take their breath away, including U.S. citizens who are traveling to Syria and fighting. If we don't reach that certain level of legal probable cause, good luck. I hope nothing bad happens when they come home. And so I do think that we've found the right balance. We go ahead and talk about the bulk piece too.
We want the privacy piece. We need to debate privacy. There's no question about it. But in the end, we have to have a bill, and we need balance there. Americans don't want to have their Fourth Amendment violated. So all the laws that we've put together have balanced that. Mike and I brought in the ACLU and other groups to listen to them, and we tailored our legislation to deal with that. And I can tell you, based on other countries, we have more protections of privacy and constitutional rights than any other country. You look at you look at Britain, you look at France, and they don't have the checks and balances, including a special group that we have now on our FISA bill. It's a privacy group that oversees the things that we do. And so the oversight's there. The two intelligence committees, Justice Department, you have the administration there, you have the courts, you have all of that there together.
So now we're into the lightning round. We've talked a lot about war. We've talked a lot about other elements, privacy. So what about cybersecurity? When is there going to be some comprehensive meeting of the minds that is going to actually manifest itself in legislation?
CISPA bill, go ahead.
I do believe we have a short window here to get this done in lame duck. I've had good discussions. Dutch and I have both had good discussions. I happened to bump into Durbin in the hallway yesterday. I haven't told you this yet.
Talking about the Senate.
Yeah, the Senate is a hurdle. We passed a bipartisan bill twice on a pretty difficult subject, and we did that by bringing all of the stakeholders in the room and working it out. Our problem was it was only a 13-page bill. And it's hard to take anything serious in Congress, apparently, if it's anything short of 2,800 pages.
And by the way, in this Congress, we got 300 votes. That's a miracle in this Congress that he and I are in right now. Yeah. But what we did, what people don't realize, that 80% of the networking is controlled by the private sector. And yet, our intelligence community is as good as anybody seeing these attacks come in. And yet we can't really share the information. It's like being a weather forecaster and you see Sandy coming up the East Coast and you can't warn anybody. Now, the target, ladies Target, whatever, but, the other attacks that are occurring are coming more and more and more. And we need to pass this information sharing. It's a voluntary bill. We've addressed the issues of privacy. And if we don't, we're going to keep this happening because, believe me, I said at the beginning, China is very aggressive, and they have stolen billions of dollars, not millions, billions of dollars from our businesses. Sometimes some companies are getting getting 2,000 attacks a day.
Congressman Rogers just leaned over and told me what we all love to hear from editors at work, and that is that you can run long. But, you know, thank you, sir. Considering the fact that this guy is actually leaving the venue of Congress and going into to become the competition, I'm a little afraid of that.
Not true.
He's divorcing me. We're still fighting over child support and alimony, but we'll see.
To get back to the questions, Ambassador, thank you so much. We have a few extra minutes, and they're willing to stay with us. So the question I'd like to ask you is, at this point, is, in your view, does President Obama require a new congressional authorization for the operation against ISIL?
Oh, look at the time. My man. I say we're going along. Yeah, gotta go.
Yeah, you got to stay on time.
Understood.
You want me to handle?
Listen, I believe that Congress should do it. I believe that we should step out and provide the authority to the president to go after ISIL in any of its nom de guerres in any shape or form, wherever they are. I believe that Congress should play an affirmative role in that decision because we are going to put people at risk, and we're going to put people at risk in places that aren't, I believe, covered by the AUMF. So I do believe that we should do this from Congress's perspective. I wish the administration keeps saying, well, if you'd like to do it, that would be fine. He needs to say, I need to have this, and you should give it to me. And at the same time, Congress ought to have the courage to stand up and say, we need to do this, and we should do it. We all agree that ISIL is a threat to the United States and our European allies. I don't think anyone disagrees with that. So then let's give the authority properly so that the average American citizen can say, okay, everybody's engaged. It's going to be hard. We may lose some people, right? We ought to be serious about this. And if we're going to do that, we ought to give the affirmative authority to do it, I think.
You know, the president...
Thank you. Thanks, Mom.
The president... That's your dad.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
The president is now using Article 2 of the Constitution saying to protect American lives. And that's what he's doing on the short term right now. When we get to the position, as Mike said, when we're going to be there from a duration and long term, we need. Now, it was a test, the vote that we had a couple days ago. And Mike and I had to really work hard to get the votes to get that passed because there were a lot of people on his side. And it was almost, it wasn't, we both on our caucuses, Democrat and Republican, we got more votes in our caucuses than nay votes, but it was close. And so, you know, you have to understand in Congress, and this is the problem we have with this Congress, because somebody else has a different point of view, that doesn't mean they're the enemy. So what Mike and I have to do is give them the facts and let them know why and what we need to do to order to protect ourselves. But Congress has to be involved. We're a great government because of the checks and balances between the president, between Congress, and the judiciary.
Let's stay with you, Congressman Ruppersberger, because I think this one is right up your alley. You're a big space fan and a knowledgeable person about it, very knowledgeable for those of you who don't know. Do you think that the intensity of the intelligence community on counterterrorism since 9/11 has led to insufficient attention to issues such as space technology, WMD, and other elements?
Well, I'm worried about space. You know, when we responded to Russia, when they came out and we thought we were going to control the world with Sputnik, JFK put a lot of money, and we became the most powerful country in the world. We had rocket science, we went to the moon, and that was great. Everyone in the country knew who the astronauts were. Now that has changed, and we have NASA, we have Intel Space, and we have defense. There's not a lot of money for everything. If we don't continue our space, and if we don't let the American people, we need to let the American people know how important space is. Now, you know, we just so far we've been able to keep the resources where we need to be from an intelligence perspective. And Mike and I have worked very hard to do that. But sooner or later, China and Russia are very aggressive when it comes to space. And I believe if there's ever going to be, we don't want another world war, it's going to be space and cyber. So, you know, we also need younger generations to go into space. The younger generation don't know a lot about space, so we are not getting those rocket scientists to go in the space program. Russia and China are communist countries, and they take their 4.0 students and say, you go into space. So we need a plan. I think it's one of the most important things that we do for our country, and even the average everyday life, GPS systems, things like that, that the public can understand. But when it comes to defense and intel, we are probably the best in the world, and that's why we have resources and we can get intelligence that no one else can get.
Yeah, and just quickly, we've protected the space investment parts of our budget, and we've worked pretty hard to do that in every budget cycle that we've done. I'd like to put a little more in there. Matter of fact, this year we went about $500 million over the president's budget because we just thought.
You did that as a Republican?
Yeah. Hey, last I checked, the Constitution says defend the United States.
I agree.
So I got that part down. I'm not very bright, but I read that piece. So we've protected both on cyber. We've actually plussed up cyber spending. In space, we've gone through some issues. We've worked through some issues, but I think we've put us on a path to protect some of that spending. I do think you could do both at the same time. The problem is it just doesn't get the attention probably that it deserves. Space is rapidly becoming contested space. That's a problem for the United States, and we need to make sure that our resources are meeting that next generation challenge.
So speaking of the next generation and space, there are some significant concerns, and a couple of questions have asked about cybersecurity, perhaps in the relationship to space. But how do you believe the U.S. can best get the message to China, to Russia, to any other country that wants to infringe upon intellectual property, as they've been accused of on many occasions, and there's been some significant proof from the NCIX at least a couple of years ago. How do you get the message to them?
Can I just take it?
Sure.
You leverage them. And, China needs the United States to grow. And, one of the things, and I've had this conversation with China, and basically have said, if our citizens see what you're doing to us and stealing billions of dollars, and you're hurting our jobs and our economy and everything else, we're going to put the word out, don't buy China. And that you're going to hurt by that. And you don't want that.
But doesn't that create a sort of a pseudo-info war? And is that productive?
When you have billions of dollars stolen from your businesses, and that you have to do something about it. And I think the president understands that. He's got to stand up, leadership to leadership. Mm-hmm. But you can't. What we need is a global type of program where countries will cannot steal, and if they do, there's going to be accountability.
So in other words, you just can't ask them nicely. You've got to go after.
No, you have to ask China nicely because it's diplomacy. I mean, China, you just don't bang them over the head, and there are ways to communicate with different countries. Yeah. I don't trust Russia, and I'm going to tell China, don't go to bed with Russia, or you're going to pay. But
somebody's not going to get a good night's sleep in that arrangement.
Well, that's true.
So now I understand why he's not going to radio to begin some intelligence or substantive news kind of operation. It's going to be comedy.
He wants to be a comedian.
And you'll probably be his first guest, right?
Yeah, exactly, he would be. Cyber is the greatest national security threat that America is not ready to handle. I've never seen anything quite like it. And it's ramping up. And so now you have international criminal organizations performing at the level of nation-state cyber hackers. The longer we let this thing go, the worse we are. So if we really want to have an impact on China and Russia, we have a whole host of things that we should do. And I argue we ought to go after companies that use it, have used stolen information from the United States, all of that, good. But the number one thing that we should do is protect ourselves. Normally, if it's a missile deployment, anti-missile system, that's easy. The government can do it. We can self-deploy it. We can protect the United States. 85% of the networks out there are private networks. So when we talk about offense, flicking our enemy or our adversary, guess what? When that attack comes back, it doesn't come back at the United States necessarily. It goes into those private networks. We need to come up with a system to embolden our private sector to protect itself. That's why we've done the CISPA bill not once, but twice. And we are in this last window. If we don't get this bill done in lame duck this year, the whole process starts over.
We're getting the vote.
And I guarantee you that it will take another 2 years to get it done. That's the first step in protecting ourselves, is allowing cyber sharing, allowing the intel community to provide in a classified way malicious source code in a way that the private sector can protect itself. And we've gotten trapped up into this debate that somehow is a privacy issue. It's not. It's about protecting your privacy as you operate on a U.S. network. Today, you don't have that privacy. You're swimming, your zeros and ones are swimming right next to Russians and Chinese and international criminal organizations, and Iran and North Korea is trying to get in the business. And oh, by the way, Al-Qaeda is out recruiting individuals that have the capability to get into the business. We better fix this year. Call your senator.
So
Hey, it's the White House. You know, the White House has been working a lot closer to us. They've been communicating with us on a regular basis now on ISIS. So I think that they understand that threat, especially because of Target and some of the other, and it's going to keep coming.
Okay, so we've got time for one more question for brief answers. Yesterday, D&I Clapper used the term immaculate collection.
A what?
Immaculate.
Immaculate.
Okay.
That's being pedantic. You know what pedantic is? Using a big word when you use a little word. So what is it?
Gotcha. He used that word, that term, to describe the expectations of intelligence community behavior. What can an informed Congress do to explain that the intelligence business is not a perfect science?
Good, you take that one.
Oh, thanks.
You're the chairman.
Yeah, you know. Two things keep me up: spicy Mexican food.
Questions like that.
WMD and cyber.
And cyber, and these questions. But part of our problem and our challenge is we have the working function of doing the oversight in the community in a classified way to protect those programs, to make sure they're getting the resources, to make sure they're comporting with the law. That's a big part of what we do every day. On the public side of this has been probably as frustrating as anything I've ever gone through in the last year with the amount of information on the NSA and other things, including what we're having to deal now with our European colleagues, just trying to get the facts married up with the opinions of where they got those. And it's been immensely challenging. And it has been very difficult to even catch the imagination of the public that, hey, this stuff's not easy. And every day, we are a whisper away of getting one piece wrong that lets one person through to do something god-awful here in the United States or our European allies. We are always that little bit away from making that mistake. And so we have tried to at least try to apply the facts so people can have an informed opinion. Now, candidly, it's not going very well. And I'm not sure I know the answer to that. Why? The reason we're saying that, I'm not sure I know the answer.
What did you just say?
I have no idea. Okay. At least it wasn't going to get us in trouble today, or this morning, I should say. And so what we've tried, again, what we're trying to do is at least let Americans know what we are doing. The problem is after they watch a little bit of TV and they watch a great movie somewhere, and then they read a newspaper article that didn't get, base their whole article on one slide out of 1,000 slide deck and are just clearly not going to get it right, it is hard to unwind them. They believe that we're listening to every phone call. They believe that just happens and that we can type in a master computer and type in a word and figure out whatever that code word is and pick up a terrorist operating in Cleveland. And it's really frustrating to try to wind that back to understand, no, we follow the law. We have to do that. If it's a U.S. citizen, we have very high standards. Overseas, it's nearly impossible. You're dealing with billions and billions and billions of communications, and it's our intelligence services job to narrow it down to that one person that's of interest. I really don't care about Aunt May's bunions. I have bad news for you. It's not that interesting.
You better believe that.
Well,
Aunt May's bunions.
And that's our frustration. So how do we do that? How do you get America focused on what the real work is doing, what the real challenge is? We're working at it. I'm not sure we've figured it out yet.
Technology is growing, and we have to maintain and stay ahead of Russia, China, other countries on technology. And when we grow with technology, the internet was great, but look at all the attacks and the things that are occurring right now. So we need to be leaders and stand up and put together a system. And the other thing, too, my staff always gives me a hard time when I say something negative about the media, but it was driving Mike and I crazy after the Snowden issue and all these things that are coming out. And not all the media, but when you would hear literally the national issue and people are saying NSA's listening to you, NSA could care less, like, what did you say about Aunt Molly's bunions? Or they could care less about whether you're ordering pizza, having an affair. They really are focused people and dedicated people who are very upset about the criticism that they had after Snowden. and we were able to answer issues. Now, I believe Snowden, we can make it into a positive. It is a very negative. We have lost a lot of information. We've lost terrorists that we were on because he gave out sources and methods. But if we can address this now, there's a lot that's out there. We can talk about what needs to be cleared, what doesn't. We have too many clearances, in my opinion. We don't need to have everybody have classified information. The key is not giving out sources and methods. That's what we have to protect at all times.
So I don't know if we answered his question.
This
is our challenge, too. So this was a professional, successful business person in the United States. The other day, he's telling me he thinks all of this is just a bunch of hooey, right? All the threats are a bunch of hooey. And so think about this, and he says, you know what, we won the Cold War, we don't even have any nuclear missiles to worry about. This is an educated, professional person. It was Dutch's uncle.
Well, my aunts don't have bunions.
But if you think about that statement and how far we have to go, right? So the intelligence community has worked itself into a corner, right? You're all sweating about it. You're laying awake at night trying to worry about the next proliferation issue or the next cyber attack or the next terrorist attack or the next rising army that we have to worry about that's dangerous somewhere in the world. But America doesn't see any of it. And the example that he used, I found this interesting. He said, hey, my kids don't have to get under the desks anymore to worry about a nuclear attack. And if you think about it, how dumb was that? I mean, geez. So here's the problem. How do you get these folks re-educated? I got bad news for you. There are nuclear missiles pointed at us. Right? It's pretty dangerous. There are a new fleet of nuclear submarines that are completely nuclear capable to blow up the United States. And by the way, some of these governments have not been acting as good world citizens lately.
Like Iran.
Or if you look at Russia and China, what they've done. China's nearly doubled its quiet nuclear submarine fleet. It's deciding to go after us in space and cyber. Pretty interesting. When you look what the Russians are doing. With their tactical nuclear arsenal. Very concerning stuff, but the public doesn't see any of it. And so because of the work that our intelligence community does and keeps it at bay, they think everything's fine. All we have to worry about is what Kardashian has tweeted today. That's a problem for us, and we haven't figured out how to do it and how to get around that. When you have folks like that, who shocked me a lot, take that position, I thought, boy, we have got a lot of work to do. Just so that, not to scare people, to scare them out of their daily lives, but to clue them in as what are the real threats? And what is our intelligence community doing to keep us safe at night? Yeah. And that's a challenge. It's going to be a long-term challenge, I think, for us.
This is the precise reason why I personally believe that news is not what people are talking about. News is what people don't know. And it's our job as journalists to bring it to them. And Insa and Afsia, I congratulate you for having these two here because they are the epitome of pulling the curtain back and letting you see what's going on without giving away sources and methods and secrets. And I thank you so much, Chairman Mike Rogers, House Intelligence Committee, and Ranking Member Dutch Ruppersberger. Thank you.
Thank you.